Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. So, in this video, I'm going to go over my thoughts on the games that I played in the month of October 2024. This is more of a journal style than anything, because I want to talk about games that I haven't done a formal review for or have spoken out loud my thoughts for some of these games. Some of them are new to me, some of them are old games that I've returned to, and then just some thoughts on some games that I have played recently. So here's a snapshot of what I did get to in the month of October. I don't think much will change in the next couple of days, and so this is looking like a final version for how many games I've played, with the exception for perhaps a few more games of Glass Road. So the majority of my experiences with board games this month has definitely been with Glass Road. It is the game that I'm thinking about the most, and is most likely the reason why I did not put out new content as often as I did in this past month. Black Forest is partially to blame as well, as I was able to play this game a lot and really dedicate a lot of time to making a pretty long video on my review of it, and so that's another reason why. But kind of going through what has been going on with my time, the majority of my time is with Glass Road. I've been really grinding to just really understand the game and get to a point where I feel very comfortable about putting out more content for Glass Road. It's been really interesting to see the journey in the past couple of months when this was first released in August, as well as in the last month in particular. There have been ebbs and flows for my overall ranking, definitely going into a downward spiral here because of the new arena season happening and beginning in October, where the opponents have, I think, been more competent, or at least more seasoned and experienced. Competency is definitely not the right word. I think everyone is competent in playing a game, but I think a lot more people are really less, they're less exploring the game and pushing around buttons and more really competing for arena spots. And I've been playing mostly the arena mode for Glass Road. And so as I have been playing this game, I've really, it's always, I guess, I wanted to talk about my thoughts about how much time or how much mental effort you want to invest into a game over and over again to grind to higher levels. And that has been a test for me with Glass Road in particular. I still really enjoy this game, and I do have many ongoing games of this at a single time right now as a snapshot. And there are times when I think things might get muddled together and I make silly mistakes here and there, and therefore it costs me a lot more games than perhaps I should give up, or lose. And so it is disheartening to see yourself not performing at the same level as you would think. And so, I don't know. It's an interesting conundrum to be in, whereas I think board games in general are to be approached at a more casual and fun level rather than at the competitive level or as an aspect, as opposed to what you might see in events such as the World Series of Board Gaming, which is always very interesting to me. But I feel like there's so many games that offer a lot of strategic and more deterministic types of experiences, but there's always sometimes an element of randomness, sometimes so that it creates an unwinnable situation if you're playing against another player at a similar level. Or even they may not be at the same level as you, but the amount of randomness is such that it doesn't give you the opportunity to play at a similar level, or they might get lucky enough to beat you. And when it comes to longer games, more complex games, Glass Road is definitely not the most complex game out there, but you can imagine longer games, Arc Nova, etc., where that randomness may really come into play and really affect your game and your view of the game in a negative way. And so I've kind of had a taste of that in the long run, where I see some of my opponents getting an opportunity to play a lot of different buildings and form a bigger engine, perhaps with the right amount of timing that was not available to me. And so, sometimes I feel like I'm playing catch up, and I can't, see an opportunity to very much, catch up at an equal pace as my opponent and make it a close game. But that doesn't happen very often, I would say. And I think, once again, this game, Glass Road, is so quick that you don't need to worry about that too often. If you do have just the bad luck that you might have, you can always set it up and play it again. And asynchronously, you can get through a couple of these games pretty quickly in in about 5 days or so. So yeah, it's been really interesting. And I guess to sum it up, I've still been really enjoying Glass Road and plan to put out more content. I know the idea has been thrown around to talk about the helper cards and rank those, and I want to do that and incorporate more of my thoughts on the buildings and strategy and approach to this game now that I have a lot more plays under my belt at the multiplayer level on Board Game Arena, playing against a lot of folks who are very competent, or I should say very skilled at this game, and have taught me a thing or two about the overall general approach as well as the nuances that this game provides. And so that will be an ongoing and future project. We'll see when I get to it. But let's talk about some of the other games that I got to in this month. And so first, let's quickly talk about Duck and Cover. This is a new release where you have a grid of cards that is played in front of you, and the deck is randomly flipped over, and it tells you which numbered card you need to move, and you get to choose which direction you move them in. If you flip over a card and there aren't any numbers on your own board, then you skip it and you continue on. And essentially, once this deck runs out and you have a set number of cards left open for you, you will score those cards. I apologize if that didn't sound very coherent, because on Board Game Arena there is a quack sound that plays whenever you don't draw a card that you can move or shift over to an orthogonal place, and so that was kind of distracting. Anyway, so this game offers a lot of randomness in the cards that come out. I think in general you want to cover up lower numbers and keep the highest number possible. So I think the strategy is pretty straightforward and not as engaging as it doesn't provide as many meaningful decisions as you might think. When you do isolate a deck or a stack of cards like so, you do get to choose where it might go. But once again, even though that might offer you a couple of decisions to make where to place that stack, it will typically go next to, I think, a pile that has lesser cards or something like that. But you always run the risk of moving the two over and covering a really hard card if there are only really high cards next to it. And so there is an element of strategic placement as well as knowing what the deck has to offer still as you are drawing those cards from the deck. And so, despite it being a little bit strategic, it's not very engaging in my opinion, and a lot of it comes down to the randomness of where your cards start in the grid, as well as what is drawn from this deck of cards to tell you what to move. So that was my experience with Duck and Cover. Not the most engaging game. Next is Resist. So this game, it was a release from last year that was a pretty big hit from the designers of Undaunted. Comes this solo-only game where you are drafting. The end variant is you draft a number of cards to your Maquis deck, and you are playing these cards against a lot of these different missions that you're trying to overcome. You can either play these cards in a planning phase to utilize their effect in that regard, or in the attack phase. If you play them hidden, you get to place them back into your discard pile to use in the upcoming rounds when they're shuffled back into your deck. If you reveal them, then they are ousted out of your deck unless there are special effects that allow you to bring them back or something like that. You have a recruit deck as well, where you can bring on additional cards into your deck, because as soon as your deck runs out, if you play all of your cards revealed, for example, you will lose the ability to repeat and play those cards over and over again, and you will lose the game. You do have these spy cards, which clutter your hidden deck as well. And then, once again, overall, you're trying to defeat these missions. They each have a certain attack or defense value that you need to meet or exceed, as well as the enemies that are located at that mission site that also have a defense that you need to overcome with your attack. And so, yeah, this is a solo-only game. It's pretty easy to pick up, I think. The cards are somewhat self-explanatory, and it's really variable every time. The different missions that come out, as well as the enemies that are attached to each mission, are always randomized, and so it's a variable experience every time, and I think there are different scenarios that you can utilize to approach this game. So it's a very interesting game. As you can see, I was defeated with this first game, and so there's a lot to learn and a lot to, understand about this game to play it efficiently. It kind of reminded me of games that utilize a very similar card deck every time, such as War of the Ring, the card game, and others, where understanding the deck really helps you understand how to approach the game from game to game and get better at it. There's a skill and a skill ceiling to this game, I feel, and so and it's very replayable, especially at a solo-only count. It's easy to pull out, and since it's only cards, you can play it anywhere and at pretty much any time. So, pretty interesting game to play. I enjoyed it, and if you do enjoy solo games with high replayability, especially with a more war-centered theme, this is all revolving around the guerrilla warfare in the 1930s in Spain, and so more on the historical story to that. But anyway, really fun game. I liked it. Next, and I forgot to mention that Resist is on alpha as of today, as of this recording, in Board Game Arena. And in addition to that, 51st State, the master set, is also in alpha on Board Game Arena. I've heard a lot about this game, and I was really excited to try this out. And what you're essentially doing is utilizing these multi-use cards that you draft from an open market, and you can utilize them in many different ways to either build them out onto your faction board for different effects, such as to give you production in the intermediate phases, the income phases, to utilize them for actions as well, or to flip them over for deals that can give you resources as well during the game. And so it's a pretty straightforward card-based engine building type of game that through the years, I want to say that this game first came out maybe about somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. There have been a lot of expansions, and and this particular implementation includes some of those expansions, and so it's really cool to have this game be available. Some of the games that this kind of reminds me of include like Innovation as a card-only based, somewhat of an engine building type of game. Innovation, it's kind of its own thing. But that was kind of the first game that I thought of. There are other games that this has been compared to as well that don't come to mind, but I think this game is really replayable. I think, once again, if kind of like Resist, once you understand these cards and what they can do, you can start to see the different combinations that you can put together. I don't think any of these cards are really too complex to put together. Lots of iconography to understand that can be a little daunting at first, but a lot easier to understand as you play it. It's a lot easier to understand and coalesce with all of the other cards as well. And so, yeah, I think this game was a lot of fun. It was, really cool to see what you could do and what kind of engines you could build, and look forward to trying this a little bit more in the future. And then also in alpha is the expansion to Akropolis. This expansion came out this year. It's called Athena. And what it essentially adds are these construction cards. So these are added objectives that you're trying to meet on top of the base objectives that you are trying to utilize with the colored hexes that you have in the base game. And if you aren't familiar with this game, it's a tile laying game that utilizes a three-dimensional structure and approach, very similar to a recent hit, Harmonies, which is also on Board Game Arena. This game, I think, came out either 1 or 2 years ago and has been on Board Game Arena for a while. But essentially, back to the expansion, you have these ulterior or alternative objectives that you're trying to meet and race towards. If you are able to fulfill one of these construction cards, you take that token that says you have done it, and you get to utilize one of these single tiles to kind of fill in the cracks. Some of them are dual colored as well, so they can multiply and fulfill different objectives that you have on your board, and then the game is played as normal. And as you can see, I'm not doing too well. I kind of got lost in what I was trying to accomplish, but I think this really just adds a little bit to the game that makes it a little bit more richer and adds a deeper decision space to pursue. In addition to what you're trying to do with your own board, you are also trying to utilize some of these objectives to try to, efficiently increase your score as best you can. From recent memory, this kind of reminds me of the Mundus expansion to World Wonders, where it added a little bit more complexity with some of the buildings, the wonders that you're trying to build, with some added objectives that you should meet in order to score those. And so that's what I felt like these construction cards added. Looking through the rule book, there are 18 of these cards, and so there is a great variety of different combinations of objectives that you can try to fulfill each game. And so, yeah, an already fantastic game, one that I have really enjoyed playing in the past. It's an abstracted game that has a three-dimensional aspect to it that is pretty neat, and I think this expansion only adds positive things to the game. And then to wrap this up, I wanted to quickly just talk about Kingdomino. So Kingdomino is a classic game, Spiel des Jahres winner from way back in the day. This is a game that I played years ago, but we do own this game in person. And my oldest daughter, who is only almost 4 years old, she saw this game on the shelf and wanted to see what it was all about. And so I pulled it out, brushed out the rules, dusted off the tiles, and we ended up playing a couple of rounds of this game. And of course, she didn't understand all of the rules, or let alone the strategy of how to really play this game efficiently. I wasn't a rules lawyer, or I didn't hold her accountable very well to the strictness of how this game is played. But I told her, try to match up similar tiles to similar, to the yellow tiles to yellow, the blue to blue, etc. And introduced her to drafting. And so this, I told her, hey, just choose, here's the next piles, move your token, your pawn over to one of these tiles that you want, and then take the one that you had placed, that you had previously placed on, and she understood that, and we were able to build out little kingdoms and just have a good time. We didn't score it or anything, but I count that as a win. I count that as a play, and in a win, in essentially in introducing her to some of the basic mechanisms of how these games are played, the drafting mechanism, tile adjacency, and introducing her very basically to how things are scored in general. So this game, it's not one that I typically go to. It's a pretty light game, but I think that's why we have light games in general, because I think this was still a fun experience to share with my daughter. Pretty much for the first time. We've played some other really basic games before, but I think this is the first modern or hobbyist type of board game that I was able to pull out and somewhat play with my daughter, which was a special experience. And so here's to hoping that those kinds of experiences continue in the future, and that she is interested. If she's not, that's fine, but if she does show interest in playing more games later on, then we have plenty of good games on the shelf that I think we could play and play as a family with my wife and my other daughter as well as they grow older. I think that is a very fun experience, and those who have older children who have had this opportunity, I think it's always a meaningful experience, let alone what kind of game you play, to share that with those people that you love. And this, I think, applies to any friends that you might have in a board game group, family members, etc. So I think that's what board games is all about, and kind of to bring a full circle with the very competitive aspect of board gaming that has, I think, arisen recently, especially with the boom in with Board Game Arena during the pandemic, as well as new events like the World Series of Board Gaming. There have always been tournaments and board game get-togethers in a more competitive light for a long time, but I feel like there's been more of a push to that, and I am typically really interested in those types of experiences, but I think and those experiences have a lot of ups and downs, I think. Whereas the more casual approach to playing some of these lighter games, or playing just, games with your family to laugh and have fun, those generally tend to have more positive experiences than negative. That may, it may vary based off of the people that you have played with and the experiences that you've had. But I'm hoping that it continues to be a positive experience the majority of the time, as I share these experiences and games with my family and friends. So, so not a very busy month. Well, I guess it was busy, but not a very variable month, I should say. But it was a very great month to share with my family and to dive into games that I've been really anticipating, and to really get competitive with other games as well. So it's been a good month. Thank you for sticking around and listening to me rant about board games and my thoughts on them for the month of October. Thank you for consulting with me, and hope you schedule an appointment with me real soon. And I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.